The polished marble floor of the 47th floor reflected the city lights like a shattered galaxy. It was a universe I used to belong to, one of champagne flutes and whispered conversations, a world held together by the gravitational pull of one person, Amelia Davenport. For 10 years, our group had been my family, a tight-knit circle forged in the sleepless nights of architecture school. And for 10 years, I had orbited Amelia, the brilliant, beautiful, and blindingly wealthy sun, to my quiet, hard-working moon. I remember the sacrifice. It's a memory seared into my brain, clearer than the blueprints I draft every day. It was our final year, a week before graduation. Amelia was hysterical, on the verge of being expelled for plagiarizing a significant portion of her final thesis project. Her father's name couldn't save her from this. I found her in the university library at 3 a.m., her face pale and streaked with tears, a letter from the Academic Integrity Board crumpled in her fist. Her future was about to be a crater. My project was already done, a solid but unspectacular design I was proud of. Hers was a disaster. So, I made a choice. For 72 straight hours, fueled by black coffee and a desperate loyalty I now recognize as foolishness, I worked. I redesigned her entire project, a sleek modern library from the ground up. It was better than my own. I handed her the files and she submitted it as her own work. I took my less ambitious but passing design and submitted it under her original, now discarded project number. I got a B+. She graduated with honors. She had hugged me, tears of gratitude streaming down her face, and whispered, "I owe you for life, Sarah. I will never, ever forget this." She did forget, or more accurately, she chose to rewrite history. Fast forward 5 years. I had poured my entire soul into a pro bono project, an innovative, sustainable community center for a low-income neighborhood in Brooklyn. It was my masterpiece, the culmination of everything I believed about architecture's power to heal and unite. I presented the proposal to the Davenport Philanthropic Foundation, where Amelia's father was a board member, hoping to secure the necessary $2 million in funding. A week later, at a painfully chic garden party in the Hamptons, surrounded by the familiar faces of our friends, Amelia stepped onto a small grassy stage. With a triumphant smile, she tapped a microphone. "I have some thrilling news," she announced, her voice echoing over the manicured lawns. "The foundation is moving forward with its next major project, a community center in Brooklyn. It's a vision I've been quietly developing for months." The screen behind her lit up with renderings, my lines, my soul, displayed for everyone to see, with her name in the bottom corner. The air left my lungs. The world tilted. I confronted her near the roaring fire pit as our friends laughed nearby. "Amelia, what is this?" "This is my project." She looked at me, her eyes colder than the Atlantic just a few hundred feet away. She took a delicate sip of her rosé. "Sarah, darling," she said, her voice just loud enough for Mark and Chloe to overhear. "I know you've been struggling to land a big project, but this obsession is unhealthy. I showed you my initial sketches months ago. You can't seriously try to claim my work as your own. It's desperate." The words hit me like stones. Mark and Chloe exchanged a look of pity, not for me, but for Amelia, the victim of my supposed delusion. One by one, the faces in my social universe turned away. My phone remained silent that night. The next day I found I was blocked, removed from the group chat, excised from a decade of friendship with the surgical precision of a lie. Back in my apartment, the silence was deafening, but heartbreak quickly curdled into something harder, something colder. She had forgotten her debt, but I hadn't. I opened my laptop and navigated to a deep archive folder. There it was, the metadata from our university projects, time-stamped, proving my authorship of the library design she'd used. I found her tearful email from that night, too. I didn't leak it. That would be messy, emotional. My response had to be clean, calculated. I opened an encrypted email client and composed a new message. The recipient was Ben Carter, a journalist notorious for his meticulous takedowns of New York's elite. The subject line was simple: the foundation of a lie. The body of the email contained only a date, a time, and the address of a quiet coffee shop in the West Village. I pressed send. The first stone had been cast. The first ripple of my countermove was a subtle tremor, felt only by Amelia. Her father, Mr. Stiles, a man whose world was built on reputation and control, mentioned casually over dinner that a reporter from the New York Ledger was asking questions about their new community center project. "Just routine diligence," he'd said, but Amelia felt a prickle of unease. She called me, her voice a syrupy blend of fake concern and veiled threat. "Sarah, I heard a journalist is sniffing around. I hope you're not doing anything foolish. You wouldn't want to ruin your career over a silly misunderstanding." I said nothing, letting the silence hang in the air before ending the call. Her panic was a small, satisfying spark in the cold darkness of my isolation. She reacted by doubling down, throwing an impromptu cocktail party at her Soho loft to celebrate the project's next phase. I saw the photos online, our friends smiling, toasting her genius. Each picture was a fresh twist of the knife. Then came her counterattack. It was more vicious than I'd anticipated. Amelia, a master of social warfare, began a systematic campaign to discredit me. She told our friends that I'd been emotionally unstable since my firm downsized, that I was consumed by professional jealousy, and was now trying to extort her for money. She painted herself as the magnanimous friend, trying to protect poor, unhinged Sarah from herself. The narrative was as elegant as it was false. To make it official, she had Mark, a man who'd once been my closest confidant, a man I'd helped study for the bar exam, serve me. A courier delivered a thick envelope to my door. Inside was a cease and desist letter, typed on the heavy cream letterhead of his firm, filled with intimidating legal jargon, warning me against making defamatory statements about Miss Davenport. Seeing his signature at the bottom felt like a betrayal deeper than Amelia's. He had chosen his side. That letter was the beginning of my descent. A week later, another envelope arrived. An eviction notice. My landlord, a real estate developer and a close friend of the Davenport family, was terminating my lease with 30 days' notice, citing a fabricated breach of contract. Suddenly, I was not just friendless, I was facing homelessness. The city, my city, felt hostile and alien. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by packing boxes, the legal letters spread out before me. The weight of it all pressed down on me, a physical force. Despair was a bitter taste in my mouth. Was it worth it? Maybe I should just disappear, let her have the win, let her have my work, my friends, my life. I was at my lowest point, a ghost in my own apartment, utterly and completely alone. It was in that moment of absolute stillness that my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something compelled me to answer. "Sarah, it's Leo." Leo. He had been part of our circle for years, a quiet, brilliant graphic designer who had faded out of the group about a year ago. He'd never officially left. He just stopped answering Amelia's calls. "I'm in your neighborhood," he said. "Can I buy you a coffee? I just wanted to say I don't believe a word she's saying." 20 minutes later, we were sitting in a small cafe. Leo looked at me with an empathy I hadn't seen in months. "She did the same thing to me, you know," he said softly. "On a smaller scale. She used one of my designs for a charity gala program, claimed she whipped it up herself. When I confronted her, she told everyone I was bitter because she hadn't hired me for a bigger project." He shook his head. "Her ego is a black hole, Sarah. It sucks all the light and credit out of the room." His validation was a balm on a raw wound, but he offered more than just support. "That weekend," he said, leaning in. "The weekend she claimed she was holed up in her apartment, having her creative breakthrough on the community center. She wasn't in New York." He pulled out his phone and swiped through some pictures. There was Amelia in a fluffy white robe, a champagne flute in hand, posing by a stone fireplace. She was at an exclusive spa retreat in Vermont, with me. A few of us from my new agency went. She tagged along. He showed me the metadata on the photos. The geotags and timestamps were indisputable. It was the concrete proof I needed, the steel rod to fuse my fractured resolve. Armed with this new evidence, I was ready when the final, predictable move came. I received a call from Mr. Davenport's personal assistant, summoning me to his office on the 55th floor of the Davenport Tower. The office was an expanse of glass and steel, overlooking Central Park. Mr. Davenport was not a monster. He was worse. He was a pragmatic, powerful man who saw this as a problem to be managed. He didn't yell. He was calm, almost paternal. "Sarah," he began, steepling his fingers. "Amelia is passionate. Sometimes her passion gets ahead of the facts. It's a flaw of youth." He slid a thick envelope across the vast mahogany desk. "I am prepared to offer you $250,000 to compensate you for your intellectual property. I will also make a call and secure you a senior architect position at a top firm in Chicago. A fresh start. All I had to do was sign the non-disclosure agreement resting next to the check. This was the moment, the crossroads. I could take the money and run, build a new life on their hush money. Or I could see this through. I looked him directly in the eye, my voice steady, devoid of the tremor that had plagued me for weeks. "Mr. Davenport, 5 years ago, I rewrote your daughter's final thesis project in 72 hours to save her from being expelled for plagiarism." His eyes flickered, a micro-expression of surprise. "The weekend she claims to have designed my community center, she was at a spa in Vermont. I have photo evidence with timestamps, and I have the digital metadata for every single project either of us has ever designed." I gently pushed the envelope back toward him. "Your offer is rejected. This was never about money. It was about a foundation built on a lie, and it's time for everyone to see the cracks." The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was glittering, a sea of black ties and designer gowns. It was the night of the annual Davenport Philanthropic Foundation Gala, the crown jewel of the city's social calendar. The air hummed with power and privilege. I wasn't there, of course. I was in Leo's studio apartment in Bushwick, watching a pirated live feed on his largest monitor. The main event was Amelia. She walked onto the stage to a round of thunderous applause, looking ethereal in a silver dress. She was there to accept the foundation's inaugural Emerging Visionary in Urban Design Award for my community center. "Thank you," she began, her voice smooth and practiced, her hand resting on the glass lectern. "To have a vision, and to see that vision embraced, is the greatest gift an architect can receive." As she spoke, the enormous screens behind her, which were meant to display glamorous renderings of the project, flickered. Then they went dark. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. Then a single audio file began to play, its sound echoing through the cavernous room. It was Amelia's voice from 5 years ago, pulled from that old, desperate email, now professionally cleaned and amplified. Thank you, Sarah. I owe you my life. I will never, ever forget this." On the screen, white text appeared over a black background, quoting her own words. Amelia froze, her smile collapsing. The screens flickered again, now showing a side-by-side comparison of the university thesis projects. My original submission and the one I created for her, with metadata logs clearly displayed beneath each one, highlighting my name as the author on both original files. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. Next, Leo's time-stamped photos from the Vermont spa retreat filled the screens, a slideshow of her laughing and drinking champagne on the very weekend she claimed to have been working tirelessly on her vision. The final image was a simple, brutal text slide that lingered in the heavy silence. "Every foundation needs an architect. Who built yours, Amelia?" The silence that followed was absolute, a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room. Amelia stood paralyzed, a marble statue of shock and horror. The color drained from her face, leaving a sickly pale mask. Her eyes, wide and unblinking, were fixed on the screen that displayed her lie. In the front row, I could see Mr. Davenport on the live feed. He didn't look angry. He looked defeated. He flinched as if struck, his face hardening into a mask of cold, profound disappointment. Without a word, he turned his back on his daughter on the stage and walked briskly out of the ballroom. That was the real blow. The audience erupted into a cacophony of whispers. Our old friends, Mark, Chloe, and the rest, stared, their mouths agape. I saw the dawning realization on their faces, the shame and confusion as they understood they weren't just friends, they were accessories, willing pawns in her elaborate game. In the aftermath, my new life began to take shape. The montage of it played out, not on a screen, but in reality. The first scene. Me on a dusty construction site in Brooklyn, a yellow hard hat on my head, sharing a laugh with my new crew. A rival foundation, intrigued by the public scandal and impressed by my real portfolio, had swept in and funded the community center, giving me full creative control. Scene 2. Me and Leo, sharing a bottle of Chianti in a cozy Italian restaurant, celebrating the grand opening of his new independent design studio. The easy warmth between us was its own quiet victory. Scene 3. Me, standing at a lectern at my alma mater, not as a disgraced outcast, but as a guest lecturer. I spoke to a hall of aspiring young architects about integrity, intellectual honesty, and the importance of signing your own name to your own work with pride. 1 month later, a final email arrived. The sender was Amelia. The subject line, "I'm sorry." I opened it. It began with a long, meandering paragraph about pressure and expectations, a self-pitying excuse dressed up as an apology. I read the first 2 sentences, felt nothing, and then I dragged the message to the trash icon on my desktop. I clicked again. Empty trash. My piece was no longer a negotiation. It was a fact. Tonight, I stand on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out at the endless constellation of city lights. Vengeance, I realize, was never the point. Reclamation was. Reclaiming my work, my name, my story. They can take your friends, your apartment, even your job, but they can only take your dignity if you hand it to them. Sometimes the only way to build your world is to first have the courage to tear down the one built on a lie. Never let anyone else hold the pen to your story, and if they dare to snatch it away, you have every right, no, you have a responsibility, to take it back and write your own goddamn ending.